Hello friends, welcome to my channel PhD Life. Today we have with us Mr. Vishal Rituraj, who has secured his admission in the prestigious college Smith School of Business, Queen's University, in the specialization of strategy. So welcome Vishal. Thank you for being here with us. We are very grateful for you taking out time from a busy schedule to have a chat with us. So it would be great if you would be starting with having a brief background about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Aman. Thank you for having me here. It feels great to give back. So I basically did my engineering from Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra at the Patna campus. And post my engineering, I did my MBA from SP Jain. And I got placed in Singapore after the campus placements. And I was working in Singapore. But I wanted to get into sports management and sports marketing. So I was in Singapore. I was working as a digital marketing manager, and I wanted to explore the arena of sports because I've always been sporty throughout my life. And so I came back to India and decided to join a sports management company called Fanatic Sports. I was working as a marketing executive there. I worked there for only 6 months because there was just no fit between the corporate culture and my own profile and my own interests as well. I felt very subdued. I was just not my natural self working there. So that's when I decided that I should leave the corporate atmosphere, and I decided to teach verbal ability at Triumphant Institute of Management Education for CAT, GRE, and GMAT students. And then there I felt a real fit. I mean, I was in my element while teaching. I felt confident. I used to look forward to classes I used to take. Normally it's the opposite in corporate, right?
Yeah.
When it's Sunday, during Sunday evening, you feel dread that you have to start working on Monday. But it was actually, exactly. It was quite opposite working at time. I really enjoyed my time there. I made friends with the students as well. I made a good network around there. And so basically, that's when the decision to become a professor actually came into my mind. That since I'm enjoying the teaching aspect, and see how naive I was, I just felt that being a professor means only teaching. I had no idea about the academic research part of it. So I very naively felt that, okay, this is the career path which I need to follow, and I'll become a professor and I'll teach. But then the crude reality hit me that you actually need publications, you need case studies in order to just get into PhD, and then becoming a professor is another big deal post that. So that's when I decided to look for academic positions at top business schools in India. So any research associate roles or academic associate roles. And I applied to IIM Nagpur in strategy department as a research associate. The reason for choosing IIM Nagpur was very simple, and this I'll advise to anyone who is trying to shift into academia. The most important thing is to look at the research which the existing professors are doing there. And if there is even a small fit in terms of the research. So basically, I was very aware about the strategy literature which was happening, and I used to read a lot about public policy which was happening in India right now. Basically, mainly from the Hindu newspaper, nothing else. Basically, from the Hindu newspaper, I used to look at the public policy aspect of India. And during my research about various IIMs, I found the professors at IIM Nagpur really delving deep into the National Skill Employment Mission, the National Skill Mission, and the entire skill ecosystem framework of India. And that's why I decided to apply to IIM Nagpur. Luckily, I got into the program, the academic research associate role, and that's when I actually got introduced to the academic research papers and the list of journals which are there and the kind of case study which you used to write. And during my stint there, I actually co-wrote a book chapter with Sheffield University on AI and gender policy, and that was my first big research experience there. And I also got to write a research paper on typology of artificial intelligence policies there. So it just gave me a hope that I can actually sustain in the academic research department. And that's during my stint there only I prepared for my GRE, gave the GRE, prepared for my TOEFL, gave the TOEFL, got my letter of recommendations, and applied to Canadian universities. And that's how I got into Queen's.
So, like your profile, it seems that you have been preparing for this PhD very seriously, doing the research working as a research associate, then having some papers ready, delving deep into the area which you want to research upon, and then going forward to the actual PhD journey.
Yes, actually, Avan, you know what the problem was? Whenever someone hears PhD, it's like it's 5 years of your investment, right? It's 5 years, and I had actually burnt my hand in corporate, so I already knew that okay, if I don't like something, I won't be able to sustain there. So I really had to litmus test it. I had to really be sure that I want to be in the academia atmosphere. And the best thing about research associate roles is you get to shadow the professor all the year round. So you are preparing question papers, you are evaluating the answer sheets, and you are with the professor all the year round. So it really helped me make my mind whether academia is the right field for me or not.
Definitely, it's a very good thing to work with the professor, because then you actually know, because researchers show that many of the PhD people just leave PhD because they are just doing PhD for the sake of time pass kind of a thing.
True.
But only people who do it seriously sustain in a longer run.
Exactly.
So one question comes to my mind, that you have been working at IIM Nagpur, and you have been in India since so long. So why did you go for foreign universities, and why not good colleges in India like IIMs, IITs, XLRI, MDIs, etc.?
So that was actually a big question. I think the answer has multiple facets to it. One thing was I actually got a global exposure during my MBA at SPG. So that actually paved me to understand how life is abroad and how different it is from life in India. That was one aspect. The second is my sister and brother-in-law were actually in Canada at that time. They had PR and they were living there. So that was another pull, that part of my family is living in Canada. So that was another pull to apply to Canada. And the third thing was my supervisor at IIM Nagpur. She did her MBA, PhD from IIM Bangalore. Okay. And she actually told me that since you already have a good understanding of how research is conducted at a top Indian institution, it will be great to broaden your horizon and go abroad and look for research opportunities there. I'll just say the basic difference between the research curriculum from Indian and foreign universities is, I feel the pressure to do research starts from day one at top North American universities. That's what I felt during my time at Queen's only. From day one, you are promoted to write research papers and do research. Whereas in India, as I know, that the first 2 years are basically the MBA curriculum. Mostly it's the MBA curriculum. You're taught again, you're with the class. So that's one thing. And also the research funding is also, it's a very, money is the biggest evil, but that is also one big factor, that the research funding which North American universities generate is huge. And again, coming back, since my research topic is in AI, artificial intelligence, and the ethics surrounding it, I really did not find any research environment in India regarding ethics of AI. And this is basically because we are still a developing country, and that's not a problem. We will get to AI maybe in 4 to 5 years time. But I felt my research needed to be in an environment where AI is actually being developed right now. So that was one of the reasons why I also chose North American University. But I only applied to Canada because I had already got my permanent residency there. So that was the reason why I only applied to Canada.
Yeah, because in India, as you mentioned, like we have everything, but somewhat government is now somewhat focusing upon the research expenditure, research support. We are having various programs, but prior to this, if you talk about 5 years earlier, then we were not having that much support. So but still we are in the growing stage as if compared to the foreign Europe and America and England universities. Definitely. So it would be great, because if you would be telling about whole your admission procedure over there, because as a layman it seems very complicated to me, that how to start, from where to start, how to apply, because in their application itself they ask for so many things that we are not very sure how would be doing this. So if you could just guide from scratch, A to Z, from your application to your test course to everything.
Sure. So I'll tell you, I'll be honest. When I first logged on to their website, I remember it was University of Toronto at Rotman School of Management, and I saw the list of documents which they needed in order to just the application to be finished. I felt overwhelmed, and I felt this is not possible. I won't be able to do it. One piece of advice for anyone who is trying to apply to foreign universities will be start early. Start 6 months before the application deadline. That's a must. Because I'll tell you, in India, to get the transcripts, these things take time. The bureaucracy takes time in order to get the transcripts and all. So start 6 months early. What I did, I'll just go through the timeline. 6 months before the application deadline, I made an Excel sheet wherein I wrote on the left column, I wrote the universities which I want to apply. And on the right columns, I wrote about their information. Like, for example, the number of letter of recommendations required, SOP required or not, funding which they are giving, the stipend which they are giving, the professors which I need to contact from the universities, and whether they are accepting GRE, GMAT or not. So these were the kind of information which I prepared using the Excel sheet. And I also wrote their UT Dallas management ranking. So I'll just share it with you. It's University of Texas at Dallas. They have the most comprehensive PhD rankings in the world. They are the only university which actually promote PhD rankings. Normally, the rankings which you get for universities are based on business school, which is MBA rankings. But for PhD rankings, I followed the UT Dallas management rankings. And what I did was very simple. I put the filter as Canada and I selected the top 5 universities. This is not the right way, by the way. I think everyone should diversify their risks, because no matter how good your profile is, no one is sure that your research fit will be there with the top universities or not. So you should always apply to 5 top universities, 1 or 2 average universities, and 1 or 2 safe schools. That's how you should diversify. Because see, the problem in North America, any public funded university is amazing. So it's not like a University of Calgary, for example, is not good. It's just that it is not globally recognized as much as University of Toronto, but the research which they do is amazing. And the stipend which they give is also similar. So the first thing will be to make an Excel sheet and dump all the information which you get from the website. That's the first thing which I did. Then the biggest dilemma is whether to give GRE or GMAT. That's another question which people get. So since I taught verbal ability for GRE, GMAT and CAT, and I had already given CAT. I had good percentile. I did not select GMAT just for the sole reason that the maths is a tiny bit difficult as opposed to GRE. The GRE English is much more difficult than GMAT, but the mathematics of GRE is easier. And since I was already a verbal ability faculty at time, my English department was sorted. So I chose GRE. Now, when to give GRE? Some people give it as early as possible and they just be done with it. I chose to give it pretty late because again, it's the Indian mindset, right? Thoda aur prepare kar lenge to thoda aur number aa jayega. So that's the reason why I just delayed it and I gave it in October, whereas the application starts in November. So I gave the GRE in October, which was pretty late. Now, in the Excel sheet, one should also write the kind of percentile which every university is expecting. So they normally give this information. So for example, I'll just University of British Columbia in Canada, they expect only 95 plus percentile in both sections of GRE, which is quite difficult because you will be good at one thing, getting 95 percentile above in both sections is a bit difficult. So write the information in the Excel sheet which you have prepared, stating the kind of percentile they require. The ballpark figure is if you get 85 plus percentile in both sections, then you're sorted. Then that eligibility criteria is sorted. So which comes around, you should get above 320 out of 340 in GRE. That's the ballpark figure which you should aim for. I got 328, which I was lucky to get. Again, the verbal ability part really helped me. Teaching verbal ability really helped me there. So I got 328, and then I applied for TOEFL. TOEFL is a very easy exam. You need to get only 100 out of 120. It's not difficult for anyone who has done proper schooling and has done universities in India. It's not a problem. But you give TOEFL as well, and then start preparing your SOP. That's the third process. Now the SOP, I will recommend first prepare an academic CV before preparing the SOP, because while preparing the academic CV, you will get to understand your journey better. Yeah. And after preparing the academic CV, which they ask for, by the way, they also ask for an academic CV. An academic CV is nothing; it's just a normal CV, but with more focus given to research experience. That's the only thing with academic CV. So I prepared my academic CV, and then I started preparing my SOPs. Now with SOPs, the basic structure is very simple. They want your introduction at the beginning. They want why do you want to do PhD? They want to know about your research experiences and why you have chosen that particular university for undergoing your PhD. Now, this is, I think, the most important part. Why have you selected University of Toronto? Why have you selected Queen's University? This question needs a lot of reiteration. It needs a lot of iteration. And the best thing will be, whenever you're preparing SOP, prepare SOP for separate colleges. So the major framework will be the same. But that paragraph, why that particular college, needs to be iterated over and over again. So the best thing is you go to the university website and look at the kind of research which the university professors are doing, and then try to again, it's so naam le lena chahiye in professors ke research ka. So I was really inspired to do research because of a paper by XYZ, and that just name call that professor. That will be very good. And always in SOP, try to write your SOP like an academic paper. So there should be references in the end. You should have written certain papers in your SOP while writing about your research proposal. So when I was writing my research proposal, I robbed some names of big researchers, academic researchers in the world, and I cited their papers. So it gives you a feeling that this guy knows what PhD research is, what academic research is, and your SOP becomes very academic. So I'll always say write 4 to 5 references at the end of there should be 4 to 5 references at the end of your SOP. So after you have done your SOP, the most tricky part is to ask for letter of recommendations. And these North American universities, they actually ask for 3 letters of recommendation.
Okay.
Now, for someone who has passed out in 2016 and who is working for the last 3 years, it becomes very difficult to call your professors and ask for letter of recommendation. And that's where my research associate role at IIM Nagpur really proved to be helpful, because one of my referees was the supervisor with whom I was working. So that really helped me, and in that letter of recommendation, she was able to say that we have co-written a book chapter together, we have written a research paper together. So it really boosts your profile, because your professors at your master's or undergraduate level, they don't really know you personally. So that's a big problem. The kind of letter of recommendation they write is very generic, that this guy was very good, very obedient, and XYZ. And the thing is, and the one thing which I found, I don't know, I may be wrong here, but the foreign universities, the top foreign universities, give a lot of weightage to your letter of recommendation, as opposed to what I felt in Indian university. In Indian university, it's merely a bureaucratic requirement. I felt
just the criteria to fulfill.
It's just, exactly, because everyone writes the same thing. But there, they actually they give an email link to the professors, and they have a separate form for every university. There is a separate form in which the professor has to write about the candidate. So I think the letter of recommendation part is very important, and if you're working as an academic associate or research associate student, it will be really helpful. Once all these documents are done, you just pray and apply, and then hopefully you'll get some interview calls. And regards to the interview, here the interview, and this I felt when I was researching about the Indian universities, they really ask conceptual questions in India. What I felt, they ask about jargons, they ask about certain research which is being done. Here, what my experience was, they don't ask any of these things. They just believe that you know what you're doing. What they want to ask is how much of research fit is there between you and the professor who is interviewing you. That's the only thing which they are really focused about. So any interview call which you get, do at least 5 to 6 hours of research about the professor who is going to interview you. That's the most important thing. Try to understand the kind of research area he or she is working on, and then try to link your research area with that research area. So I'll give you an example. I got shortlisted for York University. It's Schulich School of Business. It's in Toronto. It's a top university. I just prepared for the interview, like I did a cursory reading of the conceptual elements of strategy, and I mugged down what is strategy, what are the strategic implications of, like any Indian student will do, right? And I wrote tell me, and of course you have to write tell me about yourself. You have to prepare about the question, tell me about yourself. I did that. Why do you want to do PhD? Why York? Everything I prepared. But the kind of questions which I was asked was, how do you think my research fits with your research? That was the first question which I was asked. And since I had very little idea about his research, I was not really prepared for that interview. So that interview really, I was not selected there. So that was sure. But that interview really made me aware that what I need to prepare for. And I think for North American universities, you have to really be aware about the kind of research which the professors are doing. So that is very important. That's I think the entire timeline of it, of how to apply for research universities. One basic advice will be, don't get overwhelmed. Try to break down the task into small sub-components. Like, for example, if they are asking for 6 documents, concentrate on one. GRE. Okay, I need to apply for GRE. I'll give my GRE and then take it. Again, I prepared an Excel sheet and I just ticked it. Okay, GRE is done. TOEFL is done. SOP is done. And again, forward your SOPs to your friends and near and dear ones, so that they can proofread it. It's very important, and just ask them, what do you think about this candidate, the SOP, what does it bring out? So that is very important. But just break down the entire task into small subcomponents, and then the process will be easier.
So does the application process over foreign also start at the same timeline as Indian universities?
It starts in November, I think. Normally it starts in November.
Okay. And the end date is like how much time do they
First January.
So how much do you feel is the research publications important in the selection?
This was a big question for me as well. I feel that having research is a big plus. It's a big plus because it actually proves that you are into academic research. It proves your credentials, and if you have it, it's amazing. Okay. If you don't have it, then again, try to showcase that in your SOP that you know how to read research papers and how to cite research papers. So in your SOP, if you cite research papers, the person will know that, okay, even though he has not done research, again, doing research is a very serendipitous thing. It's a very fortunate thing. Not everyone is in the circumstance to write a research paper, right? In our undergrad and postgrad, we were not aware what we wanted to do in life. Right? We were not aware that we wanted to do PhD. And once you get into corporate, there is no chance you will get the opportunity to write a research paper. So I think if you have it, it's amazing. If you have it, I'll say apply for more top schools. That will be, if you have 2 to 3 research publications, I'll say your safety net is huge. You will get into 1 or 2 universities, that's for sure. So but if you don't have it, the best thing to overcome it is to have a high GPA. I know it sounds very boring because it's in the past and you can't really do, if you have a low GPA, you can't really do anything about it. But either have a very high GPA or really score in the 95th percentile range in the GMAT or GRE. That's one of the few ways in which you can overcome your lack of research experience. So if you have a 95% percentile in GMAT or GRE, then it shows that you're a smart person, but you just never got the opportunity to do research. So that's one thing. So if you don't have research, it does not mean you can't apply to these top universities. This is the kind of myth which is there that, oh, I don't have research experience, how can I apply to Harvard or Stanford? That's not the right way to go to. If you have a very strong undergrad GPA and a strong master's GPA, if you're in the Dean's merit list, these things really help and these things overcome your lack of research problem.
I have seen that the cost of application forms is also, tremendous. So the follow-up question would be that how many universities should we apply to, get a guarantee that we might get into something, and how to decide that optimal level, and what are your, you have been selected, so how much fees is yours, how much financial expenses you incur in foreign, and the stipend, so what all things you get?
That's a big question. Like, how many universities to apply for? I did a lot of research. I got a ballpark figure of 20. So you need to apply to 20 universities in order to get shortlisted for 3 or 4 of them and then convert it to one. See, the PhD admission process is not like MBA. This should be known to everyone. It's not like if you have a high GRE score and if you have a good profile, you will get selected. It's all about research fit. So you should diversify your risk. I did not do this, which was, I think, wrong. In retrospect, I took a lot of risk. By not applying to many universities. The cost of application is around 120 Canadian dollars, which is so the entire cost is it will be around 10,000 Indian rupees per university. So if you apply to 10 universities, it will be a lakh. So that's the reason why I only applied to 5. But yeah, in US and in Canada, I think you should apply to 10. You should have some funds available. See, the best part is now we don't have to travel and give the interview. In the elder days, people had to travel and give the interviews. It was called university visit. And in which the students who got selected for interviews had to come to the campus. They were everyone at the university. They can see the university, they can see the library and everything, and then the interview was taken. So that's what used to happen. So we are saving money there. So that's a great thing, right? And so I think applying to 10 universities and divide those 10 colleges into 5 top colleges, your dream colleges, 2 medium colleges, and 3 safe schools, which you think you will get into. So that's the kind of diversification. It's like investment portfolio. You need to diversify. You need to diversify your risk. That's the way in which you should apply. Now, coming to the funding, all the public funded universities, they give a generous funding of 34. So in Queen's University, I'm getting $34,000 per year as a stipend, right? And mainly in other universities, you get $30,000. It's the ballpark figure. You get $30,000 per year, and same happens in US universities as well. It's just it's in US dollars, so it will be 28,000 US dollars. So that's the kind of stipend you get. For international students, the fee which Queen's University charges is $14,000 per year. So you are actually saving $20,000 per year, right? But for PR, for PR and domestic students, the fee is 7,000, like half of it. So that way you can save. But again, I'll point out to one more thing. It's not that you will only be getting $20,000 per year, because once you get a TA role, teaching assistant role here at university, they pay you very well. So here in Queen's University, they are paying you $43 per hour. So which amounts to a considerable amount of money. So you can easily get around $10,000 per annum extra if you plan your activities very well. Also, there are government fundings available. This is called SSHRC. The Canadian government or Ontario government gives a lot of funding to humanities research. And the funding normally ranges from $15,000 to $20,000 per year. So again, if you get those fundings as well, you're actually, in a way, you're actually earning as much as a corporate employee, which is an amazing thing. This I found a major difference in India and abroad. So the kind of funding you get, you can actually sustain a family as well, which is amazing, like in PhD. So that was one thing. But I would actually advise not to apply to universities who are not giving funding. As simple as that. Any top university, any university worth its merit will provide funding to their PhD students. So normally there are private universities in abroad, in North America, which do not provide funding. People normally go towards them just to get out of the country. So that's one way. Okay, PhD kar lete hain, desh bahar chale gaye. So that's one way. But I think if you're serious about your research, only apply to universities who are giving you funding. So that's one piece of advice.
So here comes one tricky question. Comparing Indian and foreign universities, which you think is better in terms of research output? You can skip this question, but you need to answer in terms of what do you feel the difference? What is the difference between these two? That how they differ, and if you wish to answer that which is better, it's your wish.
Yeah. See, the better part, again, is a very loaded question, right? For someone who has a family in India, whose parents want their kids to be close to home, right? And see, PhD is a very alienating experience. That's what I've heard. It's a very alienating experience. You are living in a snow-covered country, 10,000 miles away from your home, and looking at your laptop. It can get lonely. There can be mental health issues as well, especially in your third, fourth year of PhD. There can be lots of pressure. You're living away from your family and friends. Everything is different. So for someone who is not ready to take up these challenges, top Indian universities are amazing. Like I personally say that in order to get a professorship at IIM, the best thing will be to get a PhD from IIM. I think that's a very, very safe bet you can get. I know nowadays it is getting very competitive because of the number of IIMs which has increased. But still, if you want to get a professor role at one of the top Indian institutions, there is no harm in doing PhD from a top Indian institution. It's as simple as that. But if you want to have a global experience, like you are in your 20s and you want to experience life, you have never lived in North America. See, the kind of things which you are educated about in a foreign PhD is you get to make your own food, for example. You get to manage your own expenses. You have to maybe do a part-time job as well in a cafeteria, right? These things in India, it's not possible. Like you are a PhD student, I will never imagine you working in a cafe coffee day. Like
culture is totally different in abroad and
India. Exactly. So there, no one looks down upon you. For example, even if you're a PhD student, no one will give you a special glance that, oh, he's a PhD student, he's doing cafeteria work. So that is one thing. It makes your profile a bit more holistic. It makes your personality also a bit more holistic. You're out of your comfort zone. That's one thing. But in terms of research, see, if you're doing research about the Indian context, for example, the Indian industries, the Indian socio-political atmosphere, I think doing research in India will be great. That's not a problem. If your research demands economy of a developed scale, like for example, my research is about AI, artificial intelligence, then of course my research will be better at a developed economy because AI is more developed there. So again, it also depends on the kind of research question which you have. I'll say doing PhD at IIMs is a very nice proposition. Because there are lots of colleges in India. There are lots of top colleges in India. The top 50 of India, even considering the private institutions like MDI, SP Jain or TAPMI, they are always looking for professors from IIM. And this will give you a big leg up if you have a PhD from IIM. So it's no harm doing PhD. So some people just want to move out of the country. That's their only reason for doing PhD abroad. Or bahar ka Instagram pe photo dalna. So that's one of the reasons why people normally want to move out. So that's not a right way in order to evaluate. Yes, if you're looking for more challenges, if you're up for it. So normally when people start PhD, वो थक चुके होते हैं life से. Normally इतना ज़्यादा कुछ experience कर चुके थे, they are normally tired with their life. So उनको उतना excitement नहीं चाहिए for a new world, in a global world. उनके लिए इंडिया में PhD करना at a top IIM is an amazing adventure. It's a very nice thing, and I've talked to people from IIM, PhD students at IIM, and they are very well informed about the literature. So it's not like the professors there are substandard. The professors there are top notch. It's just that they are not white. That's the only thing. It's just that they are not from North America. But it does not mean that the research in India is substandard. Not at all. Just that the funding is a bit less. Yes, I agree.
So adding to what you said, if we see 10 years before, definitely, faculties were not been focusing upon research and publication. Their total focus were upon the teaching aspect. But now, if you see the current scenario in IIMs, the faculty has major portion of his attention to research publication.
Yes.
He might take less classes, but he would definitely be publishing 3 to 4 papers in a year if he wants to get success in his career.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the trend is changing for India also.
Exactly. And the best part, I'll just note this, in LinkedIn, if you see, nowadays professors are posting about their research publications as well, which never used to happen. So nowadays if someone publishes in a journal, they normally post it with a very proud way. And this was not happening before. So people used to only care about their teaching aspect, that the kind of rating which they are getting from the students. But nowadays the research has shifted, and it's a very good start actually. I think the number of universities which has increased in India, that has provided competition to the professors as well, and this is really helping. And also, and I'm talking from IIM Nagpur perspective, the kind of MOUs they are signing with foreign universities, this is also helping the research environment. You are getting foreign researchers into the university, and they are really collaborating together and doing a lot of interesting research.
So Vishal, how was your interview experience at Queen's? Like, what all questions they asked exactly? Like, is it around theoretical aspect, the subject expertise, or they wanted to know your personality, or as you said that the research fit was the major part, but what all questions did they ask in the interview?
So the first question which everyone should be prepared about is, tell me about yourself. And I think when I was teaching at time for the interviews as well, for IIM ABC interviews, I used to say, write down that answer. Write down a 2-minute answer of tell me about yourself, because that generates follow-up questions. That's where everything starts. That's an icebreaker. So tell me about yourself is the first question. At York University, I was asked, why did you leave corporate after doing MBA? Which is a very tricky question, because you can't just say that I did not like it, right? You have to give some concrete answers. So mainly I said that my intellectual curiosity was not being fulfilled at corporate. I felt I was only working for the bottom line. It's a very risky answer. I know I won't recommend the aspirants to say this, but it was the honest truth. I was only concentrating on the bottom line, which is the profit and loss. That was the only thing which I was concentrating on. And I used to miss reading about I used to miss reading overall. I used to miss the intellectual the intellectual struggle which happens in our brain when we study and we do research. So that was one of the reasons I just knew in my first month that I am not made for corporate. So that was the thing the good thing was it made my decisions very clear, that what I wanted to do. That was the question they asked. Then they asked, why do you want to join this university? And this is the question in which you need to show your research about the university. You need to talk about the grants which they gave. You need to talk about the research centers which they have. You can even name drop some PhD students which are doing very well right now, the alumni which are doing very well right now. Yeah. So, and also talk about the research which the professor is doing, the one who is interviewing you. So that's why that particular university is very important. They did not ask me about my specialization. I don't know why, but I think they do not ask this. Why strategy? The reason being, in your SOP you write so much about this aspect of why you have chosen your specialization, that they don't ask it. And by the way, they have your SOP right in front of them. So anything which you say which is not aligning with what you have written in your SOP will be a big problem. So I'll advise you also put your printed SOP in front of you and your CV, so that you don't go off, you don't digress. Then they asked, a very pertinent question is, why do you think I should be the appropriate advisor to you? That was one question which they asked. Why do you think? Because in SOPs, in foreign universities, you need to write the name of the professor which you think can supervise. You need to write 2 names of the professor. So you have to do your research and you need to write 2 names. And they asked me this question. I was not prepared for this at the York University interview, but at Queen's University, I was well prepared for it. So that's the major question they asked. They are mainly looking at the research fit. That's the most important thing. And they are also looking at your motivation to do PhD. It should not be again like, abhi kuch karne ko nahi hai, to chalo PhD kar lete. And again, to be honest, the applicants who applied to these universities, to these top universities, they have plenty of options in their life. So it's not like their corporate door is closed. They can't go into corporate, or they can't do any other job. They can't go into social work. They can't go into UN or IMF. It's that they have all these options available, but still they decide to do research at these universities. So that's one thing in which I felt the state universities in India, the central and state universities in India, the non-IIMs and the non-IITs, I think PhD students there is a chance that there's nothing else left to do, so let's do a PhD. That's what I felt. So that's
one also difference. There are few students who have this mindset before coming to PhD, especially in this COVID times, because many people have lost their jobs, so they have just decided to go forward with this till the time the situation becomes stable. Because less or more it offers you 30,000, 35,000 stipend plus the contingency grant you get. So it is sufficient enough if you see in Indian context.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But again, it's such a big investment. You're giving 5 years of your life. I mean, if you give 5 years of your life to coding, I think you will become a software developer at a top company. I mean, it's strange, but yeah, I know this happens. I know. I am aware of this. Yeah.
So one important question comes to my mind, that you have applied for PR, permanent residency, and your fees reduced to half. So what is it all about? Like, how do we get it? What time do we get? In what time you should apply? And is it for everyone, or you have some specific eligibility for this?
So there is an eligibility criteria. The best way in order to ascertain whether you can get PR or not is there is a CRS calculator. It gives you the points you will get based on your profile. So for example, if you have a master's degree, you will get 50 points. If you have a bachelor's degree, you will get X number of points. The number of experiences you have, you will get X number of points. The age bracket which you are in, you will get points. Once you get all these points together, there is a cutoff. So currently the cutoff is around 470, and you need to cross that cutoff in order to get the PR. So for each and everyone who is even watching this, or even for you, for example, you have to first ascertain how much points you are getting, and then only go ahead. So for example, if you are getting 420 points, there is no point in applying, because you are not going to get till 470, right? But if you are getting enough points and you feel that you want to live in a foreign country, you want to live abroad, you should go ahead with this. The process takes around 8 to 9 months. You need to give IELTS, the IELTS exam as well, and the process takes around 8 to 9 months. It's a bit costly. It's a bit costly. The application, the entire procedure will itself take around 1.5 lakhs. So it's a bit costly, the process is. But once you have the PR, it is there for 5 years, and you can even get citizenship if you want. Once you get PR, it's like a green card. In US, everyone must be aware about the green card, right? It's a green card for Canada. That's the PR card. Once you stay in the country for 3 years, they offer you citizenship. You can apply for citizenship. But again, it depends on you. You can even extend it for another 5 years. So you can always be a PR of the country. You can always be the PR of the country. But if you want citizenship, you can also get it. So that's one way. But again, going through the PR process to get into PhD is not advisable, because it's like applying to another university. So you can come here as an international student. The stipend will be only $7,000 less. That's the only thing which will happen. That's the only difference. And of course, you will be eligible for international funding as well. So maybe in the long run, it will be favorable to you to be an international student. So that's not the way I did this, because my sister and brother-in-law were already in the country, and I plan to move my family also in this country in the future. So that was one of the reasons why I did it, but it is not advisable for everyone.
So finally, coming to my last question, if you could advise our viewers, our future aspirants who wishes to do their PhD from abroad, what all advice you would like to give them? Any suggestions?
Yes. The first thing will be start as early as possible. If you are in your master's or if you are in your undergrad, right now. Focus on your GPA. That's like, normally people say GPA se kuch nahi hota, and they'll give you example of a 5-pointer who's working in Google or who is studying in Stanford. Again, there are exceptions. Normally GPA does matter, and so focus on your GPA if you are in your undergrad or masters. That's very important. Then the second thing is try to read research papers from the start. I know you are not going to understand the entire content of it. I know it's very difficult. Even right now, I'm not able to understand the entire content of all the research papers, but start reading research literature. The reason being, it will help your mind to understand how research is conducted in a way. Third will be apply for positions at top institutions like IIMs and ISB as a research associate or academic associate role. Try for it. The reason, or any other university also, try to build your career around university. That will really help you in your SOP, because you will get the letter of recommendations as well.
Yeah.
So these are the three aspects. The thing which I want, I'll advise, is to be sure that PhD is the right thing for you. And there are lots of videos available on YouTube as well. There are lots of articles also that how to ascertain that PhD is the right path for you. You need to understand what happens post the PhD, what happens during the PhD, and then only get ahead with. This is not like your engineering plus MBA plus PhD thing, wherein it's like 11th, 12th, then comes engineering, then comes MBA. So yeah. This is a major decision which you will be taking in your life. And once you get a PhD, it will close many doors for you. And I'm saying this very honestly, PhD actually closes a lot of doors. So you can't get into corporate, in a normal corporate job with a PhD. The reason being, you are overqualified. Especially this happens in North America. You are overqualified for a corporate level role. So you will only be applying to research centers, universities, or big companies like Google who have their own R&D department. These are the only options which are available for you. You will not be able to get into a marketing manager job at Zomato. It's not possible once you get a PhD. But before a PhD, you can apply for a marketing manager job at Zomato because you don't have a PhD. So be very sure about what you want to do. If you enjoy university experience, if you enjoy reading overall, if you're nerdy in a way, you're a bit nerdy, I think it's the right path for people. And for personally like me, I always wanted to learn about the macro view of the world, like how institutions are run, how public policy is generated, how the macro aspect of it. I was never interested in the micro aspect of it, like how to generate profit. I was never interested in this. So for me, that really helped me understand. The best thing will be to talk to your professors at your current university. So I did talk to my professor at SP Jain before embarking on this journey, and through them only I got to know about the research associate role at IIMs. Okay. So talk to your professors. Don't be hesitant in writing a mail. Professors may seem to be very strict, but they are actually very helpful once you approach them and once you ask them how you want to curate your career. So don't be afraid in asking out a professor, even if it's a foreign professor, even if it's a professor from Stanford or Harvard. Don't hesitate in approaching a professor. They will surely get back to you. If one does not reply, then the other will. So go ahead with your emails.
What are your post-PhD plans? Do you want to settle in abroad in North America, US, or any probabilities there that you wish to come back to India? And
I have no problems in coming back to India. I actually loved my stint at IIM Nagpur, and I'll have to see how the job market here in North America is. So if I get a assistant professorship role at one of the universities here, then of course I'll go ahead with this. But if I feel that one of the top colleges in India, there is a role in one of the top colleges in India as well, then I don't have a problem in coming back to India. I actually love the IIM atmosphere. So, I mean, and since the number of colleges are also increasing, there's a higher chance that I'll have more chance of getting a professorship role at Indian institutions. But yeah, I would want to experience some university life as a professor in North America as well. So maybe 10 years or 12 years down the line, maybe I'll look back to coming back to the country. But again, it all depends on the job options which we have. Nowadays, PhDs are overflooding the market. That's what I have been told. And so maybe if I get a chance, of course, I have no problems in coming back to India. So yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, I've seen many of our professors also. They did their PhD from abroad, served, worked there for 3, 5, 10 years, and then came back to India at a professor level, direct, not assistant and associate.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a different kind of charm in working as a professor in India. I really feel that. I mean, the society also looks at you in a different way, and there's a different kind of vibe as a professor in India. So yeah, it will be awesome. And yeah, in IIM especially, in IIMs and ISB, I felt a lot of professors have foreign university, have PhD from foreign university, and then they come back to the country to teach. So yeah, hopefully.
So thank you, Vishal. It was, a very, very insightful session, especially for me also and our viewers also. So
thank you so much.
Experiencing all this foreign university procedures, you were very, detailed about our discussion. So really thankful to you for joining us here.
Thank you so much, Aman. It was a great opportunity.